Shri Krishna book by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupad. The most wonderful book. Every page and every paragraph and every sentence is laced with the, let's say, sweetest realizations of His Divine Grace, speaking the truth through, and every chance he gets, in every paragraph, and every pastime he gets, speaking the truth and finding a million ways to say the same thing. Surrender to Krishna. The same message, a million different ways. Because your soul cannot become happy until it becomes normal. Not just a sadhu. The sadhu could be a sadhu, but the sadhu, just a pious man has to go all the way to transcendental man. The transcendental man. Harekrishna. Salvation of Trinivarta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is always full of six opulences, namely complete wealth, complete strength, complete fame, complete knowledge, complete beauty, and complete renunciation. The Lord appears in different complete eternal forms of incarnation. The conditioned soul has immense opportunity to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord in these different incarnations. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said, Janma karma chame divyam. The pastimes and activities of the Lord are not material. They are beyond material conception. But the conditioned soul can benefit by hearing such uncommon activities. Hearing is an opportunity to associate with the Lord, to hear His activities. And to His activities is to evolve to the transcendental nature simply by hearing. The conditioned soul has a natural aptitude to hear something about other conditioned souls in the form of fiction and drama and novel. That inclination to hear something about others may be utilized in hearing the pastimes of the Lord. You like to hear about others. You like to hear about Krishna and all of his friends. They have quite an amazing time. Kinds of wonderful pastimes together. It's wonderful to hear about Krishna and his cowherd friends. It's wonderful to hear about Mother Yasoda and her immense, intense love for Krishna and her swooning and worrying about Krishna and waiting for him to return from the pasturing grounds. And it's amazing to hear the love the gopis have, such intense love. These are wonderful pastimes, and the conditioned soul can refer to these pastimes and listen to these pastimes and become purified, become transcendental men and women, and find their true happiness by hearing about these others, not the others of the material world. Material world, the same reflections are there. You hear famous love affairs, famous friendships, famous parents, famous servants. So these same reflection is there for all of these relationships, but they're not transcendental. They're under the influence of the modes of material nature, and they are from the conditioned world. And so the conditioned soul, but still the conditioned soul has this strong inclination to hear about the pastimes of others. So they should hear about Krishna. Then one can immediately evolve to his transcendental nature. Krishna's pastimes are not only beautiful, they are very pleasing to the mind. Even the mind, we say it sometimes the material mind, but if the mind itself concentrates on these pastimes, it actually feels great pleasure. If someone takes advantage of hearing the pastimes of the Lord, the material contamination of the dust accumulated in the heart due to long association with material nature can be immediately cleansed. Lord Chaitanya also instructed that simply by hearing the transcendental name of Lord Krishna, one can cleanse the heart of all material contamination. There are different processes of self-realization, but this process of devotional service, of which hearing is the most important function, when adopted by any conditioned soul, will automatically cleanse him from material contamination and enable him to realize his real constitutional position. So that's why this is called a science, because if you follow this procedure, you will follow in the footsteps of those others who have followed the procedure and they have attained perfection in their lives. So if you do the same thing in your own, let's say, special devotional way, you will also achieve perfection in your life, because the heart becomes clean, cleans off all the dust of material desires, and then when there's no more material desires, then there's only Krishna. Right? Lord Chaitanya also induced that simply by hearing the transcendental name of Krishna, one can cleanse the heart of all material contamination. And there are different processes of self-realization, but this process of devotional service, of which hearing is the most important function, when adopted by any conditioned soul, automatically cleanse him of material contamination and enable him to realize his real constitutional position. See, it takes you from the beginning of chanting Hare Krishna, oh, it's so pleasurable, it's so nice, I'm feeling so nice, all the way face to face to Krishna in your original constitutional position, the relationship which you're actually designed to have. The soul has been created for a certain kind of pleasure, to give Krishna the pleasure. And when the conditioned soul comes to his purified state, he begins, and from a contaminated state, he comes from the chanting Hare Krishna, and it's so pleasurable, I just want to chant Hare Krishna, it's so nice. But then you learn, as you go by, that there's more to this. You learn actually things are being uncovered in the heart. The dust keeps coming off, thicker and thicker layers are removed until you have that pure state of heart. And where the conditioned soul no longer has any contact with the material world. All the dust is removed and he becomes situated in his constitutional position of loving service to Krishna. Conditioned life is due to this contamination only. As soon as it is cleared off, then naturally the dormant function of a living entity rendering service to the Lord awakens. By developing his eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord, one becomes eligible to create friendship with devotees. Friendship with devotees. You have friendship with devotees? No? Distant friendship. One becomes eligible for having friendship with the devotees. Maharaj Parikshit recommended, from practical experience, that everyone try to hear about the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. This Krishna treatise is meant for that purpose, and the reader may take advantage in order to attain the ultimate goal of this human life. And see how Prabhupada hasn't even started the story yet. He is completely immersed in transcendental knowledge, and the ultimate end of transcendental knowledge, which is to be situated in your constitutional position. Every page is like that. Now we're going to get to the story eventually. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, descends on this material world and displays his activities just like an ordinary man. Unfortunately, the impious entities or the atheistic class of men consider Krishna to be an ordinary man like themselves, and so they deride him. This is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself when he says, Avijananti mam mudha. The mudhas, or the rascals, take Krishna to be ordinary man, or a slightly more powerful man, out of their great misfortune, they cannot accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes such unfortunate persons misrepresent themselves as incarnations of Krishna without referring to the authorized scriptures. Yes, Krishna says who he is at least hundreds of times in the Bhagavad Gita, relieving very little doubt if you're an honest person. You read it, though, Krishna must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Krishna grew up a little more, now we're beginning the story. When Krishna grew up a little more, he began to turn himself backside up. He did not merely lie down on his back. And another function was observed by Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's first birthday. They arranged for Krishna's birthday ceremony, which is still observed by all followers of the Vedic principles. Krishna's birthday ceremony is observed in India by all Hindus, irrespective of different sectarian views. All the cowherd men and women are invited to participate, and they arrived in jubilation. This is called, of course, Janmashtami. A nice band was playing and people assembled. They enjoyed it, and all the learned brahmanas were invited, and they chanted Vedic hymns for the good fortune of Krishna. And during the chanting of the Vedic hymns and the playing of bands, Krishna was bathed by Mother Yasoda. This bathing ceremony technically called Abhishek. And even today, this is observed in all the temples of Vrindavan as Janmashtami Day, or the birthday anniversary of Lord Krishna. On this occasion, Mother Yasoda arranged to distribute large quantities of grains, and first-class cows decorated with golden ornaments were made ready to be given in charity to the learned, respectable brahmanas. Yasoda took her bath and dressed herself nicely, and taking child Krishna, duly dressed and bathed, on her lap, she sat down to hear the Vedic hymns being chanted by the brahmanas. And while listening to the chanting of the Vedic hymns, the child appeared to be falling asleep, and therefore Mother Yasoda very silently laid him down on the bed. Being engaged and receiving her friends and relatives and residents of Vrindavan on the holy occasion, she forgot to feed the child milk. He was crying. He was hungry, but Mother Yasoda could not hear him cry because of the various noises. The child, however, became angry because he was hungry and his mother was not paying attention. So he lifted his legs and began to kick his lotus feet just like an ordinary child. Baby Krishna had been placed underneath a hand-driven cart, and while he was kicking his legs, he accidentally touched the wheel of the cart and it collapsed. Various kinds of utensils and brass and metal dishes had been piled up on this hand cart, and they all fell down with a great noise. The wheel of the cart separated from the axle, and the spokes of the wheel were all broken and scattered hither and thither. Mother Yasoda and all the gopis, as well as Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd men, were astonished to see how the cart could have collapsed by itself. All the men and women were assembled for the holy function itself. And all the men assembled, the function, crowded around, they began to suggest how this cart might have collapsed. No one could ascertain the cause. But some small children who were entrusted to play with baby Krishna informed the crowd that it was due to Krishna striking his feet against the wheel. They assured the crowd that they had seen how it happened with their own eyes, and they strongly asserted the point. Some were listening to the statement of the small children, but others said, "Oh, how can you believe the statements of these small children?" The cowherd men and women could not understand that the all-powerful personality of Godhead was lying there like a baby, and he could do anything he wanted. Both the possible and the impossible were in his power. While the discussion was going on, baby Krishna cried. Without remonstration, Mother Yasoda picked the child up on her lap and called the learned brahmanas to chant holy Vedic hymns to counteract the evil spirits. At the same time, she allowed the baby to suck her breast. If a child sucks a mother's breast nicely, it is said to be understood that he is out of danger. After this, all the stronger cowherd men put the broken cart in order, and all the scattered things were set up nicely as before. The Brahmanas thereafter began to offer oblations to the sacrificial fire with yogurt and bugger and krishna grass and water. They worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the good fortune of the child. The Brahmanas who were present at that time were all qualified because they were not envious. They never indulged in untruthfulness, and they were never proud. They were non-violent, and they never claimed any false prestige. They were all bona fide Brahmanas, and there were no reason to think that their blessing would be useless. With firm faith in the qualified Brahmanas, Nanda Maharaj took his child on his lap and bathed him with water mixed with various herbs, while the Brahmanas chanted hymns from the Rik, Yajurs, and Sama Veda. It is said that without being qualified Brahmanas, one should not read the mantras of the Vedas. Here is the proof that the Brahmanas were qualified with all the Brahminical symptoms. Maharaj Nanda also had full faith in them, and therefore they were allowed to perform the ritualistic ceremonies by chanting the Vedic mantras. There were many different varieties of sacrifices recommended for different purposes, but the mantras are all to be chanted by qualified Brahmanas. And because in this age of Kali, such qualified Brahmanas are not available, all Vedic ritualistic sacrifices are forbidden. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore recommended that only one kind of sacrifice in this age, namely Sankirtan Jaga, or simply chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As the Brahmanas chanted, it'd be nice to actually hear the Vedic mantras chanted by qualified Brahmanas. It's very powerful. It's so elevated and sweet to hear. You know, it's just you become like hypnotized by the sound of their chanting. And even sometimes, like when I was in
Rishikesh.
Not Rishikesh, Dehradun. I was at that ashram, and they would chant these mantras. These two women, they were like specially selected to chant these mantras every morning, 5 o'clock. So I went there a few times, and it was like, wow! You could feel this energy, the power of these mantras, coming from these ladies. And then there's like 100 people at different fires. All the fire jagas are going on. They're doing fire sacrifice at the same time every morning, 5 o'clock. That was their sacrifice that they performed there. But I could remember that. I could feel it. One morning I felt it. Wow, I really felt strong. It felt like they're chanting Gayatri mantra. They were chanting all different mantras. But so just like the reflection, to say that they were qualified, I can't say they were qualified. But because you could from that perspective, that experience, I could say, imagine actually hearing the chanting of qualified Brahmanas who are non-envious, not wanting any prestige. They're all good qualities. As the Brahmanas chanted Vedic hymns, they performed the ritualistic ceremonies for the second time. Nanda Maharaj again gave huge quantities of grains and many cows to them. All the cows which were given in charity were covered with gold embroidered garments, and their horns were bedecked with golden rings. The hooves were covered with silver plate, and they wore garlands of flowers. He gave so many cows just for the welfare of this wonderful child, and the Brahmanas in return bestowed their heartfelt blessings, and the blessings offered by the able Brahmanas were never to be baffled. One day, shortly after the ceremony, when Mother Yashoda was putting her baby on her lap, the baby felt too heavy, and being unable to carry him, she unwillingly placed him on the ground. And after a while, she became engaged in household affairs. At that time, one of the servants of Kamsa, known as Trinivarta, as instructed by Kamsa, appeared in the shape of a whirlwind. It's funny that even the name of that demon, of the cart demon, was not even given, Shankashuta, right? This is interesting to note that Prabhupada did never even mention his name. The cart demon.
Yeah.
Yeah? You tired? Look really tired. He picked up the child on his shoulders and raised a great dust storm all over Vrindavan. And because of this, everyone's eyes became covered within a few moments, and the whole area of Vrindavan became densely dark so that no one can see himself or anyone else. And during this great catastrophe, Mother Yasoda could not see her baby, who was taken away by this whirlwind, and she began to cry very piteously. She fell down on the ground exactly like a cow who had lost her calf. When Mother Yasoda was piteously crying, all the cowherd men immediately came and began to look for the baby, but they were disappointed and could not find him. The Trinivarta demon who took baby Krishna on his shoulder went high in the sky, but the baby assumed such a weight that suddenly he could not go any further, and he had to stop his whirlwind activity. Baby Krishna made himself heavy, and began to weigh down this demon. The Lord caught hold of his neck. Trinivarta felt the baby to be as heavy as a mountain, and he tried to get out of his clutches, but he was unable to do so, and his eyes popped out from its sockets. Crying very fiercely, he fell down on the ground of Vrindavan and died. The demon fell exactly like Tripasura, who was pierced by the arrows of Lord Shiva. He hit the stone ground, and his limbs were smashed. His body became visible to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. And when the gopis saw the demon killed and child Krishna very happily playing on his body, they immediately picked Krishna up with great affection. The cowherd men and women became very happy to get back their beloved child, Krishna. At that time, they began to talk about how wonderful it was that this demon took away the child to devour him, but he could not do so. Instead, he fell down dead. Some of them supported the situation. This is proper because those who are too sinful die from their sinful reactions, and the child Krishna is pious, and therefore he is saved from all kinds of fearful situations. And we too must have performed great sacrifices in our previous lives, worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, giving great wealth in charity, and acting philanthropically for the general welfare of men. Because of such pious activities, the child is saved from all dangers. You're trying to figure it out. Conditions will always like to try to figure it out, speculate. The gopis assembled there spoke among themselves, what sort of austerities and penances we must have undergone in our previous lives. We must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offered different kinds of sacrifices, made charities, and performed many welfare activities for the public, such as growing banyan trees and excavating wells. I'll try to find a way to explain it. As a result of our pious activity, we have our child back, even though he was supposed to be dead. Now he has come back to enliven his relatives. After observing such wonderful happenings, Nanda Maharaj began to think of the words of Vasudeva again and again. Remember what Vasudeva was telling, when you go back to Vrindavan, don't be surprised if strange things happen to this child. Yeah? After the incident, when Yasoda once was nursing her child and patting him with great affection, there streamed a profuse supply of milk from her breast. And when she opened the mouth of the child with her fingers, she suddenly saw the universal manifestation within his mouth. She was within the mouth of Krishna. The whole sky, including the luminaries, the stars, all directions, the sun, moon, fire, air, the seas, the islands, the mountains, the rivers, the forests, and all other movable and immovable entities. Upon seeing this, Mother Yasoda's heart began to throb, and she murmured within herself, "Oh, how wonderful is this!" She could not express anything, but simply closed her eyes. She was absorbed in the wonderful thoughts, Krishna showing the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even when lying down on the lap of his mother. It proves that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always the Supreme Personality of Godhead. whether he is manifested as a child on the lap of his mother or as a charioteer on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The concoction of the impersonalist that one can become God by meditation or some other artificial activities is herewith declared false. God is always God in any condition or status, and the living entities are always the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They can never be equal to the inconceivable superpower, supernatural power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 7th chapter of Krishna, the salvation of Trinivarta. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.